Asset recovery. It's a critical component in combating financial crime. But how does it work? And how does it protect Jamaica's financial system? All that and more on this episode of Follow the Money. Welcome to Follow the Money, the podcast that unpacks the world of financial crime and how it affects us here in Jamaica. This podcast is a production of the Financial Investigations Division, FID. I'm your host, Garth Williams, and today we're unpacking asset recovery, how taking the benefits out of crime helps dismantle networks, protect Jamaica's financial system, and strengthens trust in the global financial ecosystem. With us is the FID's Principal Director of Financial Crimes Investigations, Keith Darien. Hi Keith, how are you today?
I'm great, Garth. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, happy to have you. I should also say to our audience, our viewers, that I'm Garth Williams and I'm sitting in for the usual host, Robian Williams. And we thank Robian so much for the excellent job that she's done. But today, I've had to run in. So, Keith, you're missing out on the experience with Robian. You're stuck with me.
And I was actually looking forward to that interaction with her.
We'll arrange a part two. Now, Keith, we're talking about asset recovery, and it might be a foreign phrase to many. In simple terms, what is it?
All right, so asset recovery essentially is a legal process, and I have to emphasize the term legal because it is finalized by the court, which seeks to take away whatever money or any other form of assets that a lawbreaker obtains from crime. So it is trying to identify those benefits from crime and to ensure that the legal system determines that it is a criminal property and that asset or money or motor vehicle or whatever form it is in is taken away from that lawbreaker.
So if I, for example, use some illegal means, robbery, whatever it is, scamming, you name it, and earn 100 or gain 100,000 US dollars, if you, in the course of going through the courts, right, I have that $100,000 in a bank account and it is forfeited, that's asset recovery.
That is
because
asset
you're recovering that asset. Right. Or if I take that $100,000 and use 50 to purchase a motor vehicle or invest in a property, then that property, because it's come from those ill-gotten gains, forms part of whatever is forfeited as an asset recovery. Or
that is correct.
That is recovered.
You have the concept correct.
Good. Now, I mean, there's this notion that crime must not pay, right? Where does that asset recovery and that same notion of crime not paying fit alongside investigations, prosecutions, and sentencing?
So traditional police purpose is to identify people. There's an offense and you try to find the offender who is now arrested and taken to the court and he's tried for breaking the law in regards to that investigation. As it relates to asset recovery, we are moving from that point where they are focusing on the person while asset recovery is focusing on the profits and the property that that person obtains from crime. So it complements each other, and what it does is to send a stronger message to lawbreaker that there is no incentive in committing a criminal offense. So rather than that individual only getting a term of imprisonment, which in most cases is a bit dissuasive. I mean, 2 years for stealing 100 million, you serve that 2 years, you're back out, and you have 100 million worth of assets. The respect that asset recovery have in the criminal justice system is to ensure that there's no ultimate benefit that is accrued to that lawbreaker.
So ultimately modernizing crime fighting, because it's no longer, as you pointed out, about the individual, but also about what they have gained.
Yes.
Yeah, because you can always buy your time behind the jail, right. Behind the prison walls. But then when they come back out, you're gone right back into what you had earned.
There you go.
Now, through asset recovery, you pay your time, And when you're out, you're essentially back on the ground floor.
Back at the starting point.
Yeah. Which outcomes matter most? The deterrence, the disruption, restitution, or is it all three?
That's a very good question. I mean, your primary long-term strategy has to focus on deterrence. You want to prevent crime from happening. And our chief legislation that guides the operation of the organization is the Proceeds of Crime Act. And it puts a whole lot of framework in place as it relates to preventing the financial system from being abused by money launderers. But there's no perfect regime. So clearly, there has to be a robust system in place that is able to detect crime when they occur, to do effective investigation, and to ensure those lead to successful prosecution. And at the end stage, as it relates to restitution, you want the public to have confidence in the criminal justice system.
Right.
If I am defrauded 50,000 and it is recovered, there must be a system in place that allows me to be restituted for my losses. So if I should go into a real world context, preventative measures is the primary strategic long-term focus. But we are not in an ideal situation, so you must have your techniques to disrupt in terms of your detection methodologies, and also to ensure that victims are compensated ultimately.
Yeah, because ultimately people will always want to try to beat the system, but if the system in response to their efforts can prove that once you try, you're going to get punished, then ultimately it reduces the enticement to try.
The deterrence aspect of it.
Absolutely.
There you go.
The big question though is, Keith, what happens to the money? What happens to these assets? Where does it go when it's forfeited to the crown? And for people who want to know, what is the crown? We're talking about the government, really.
Yes.
But where does it go? Because outside of a victim getting back the money, or sometimes they can't even get back the money, what happens in Jamaica? Indeed,
there are some crimes that a victim is not readily identifiable. So for an instance, drug trafficking activities. You won't find a victim that can say, okay, I purchased contraband from Garth, and as such, I should be compensated. So when we have forfeiture, where we are not able to readily identify victims or a specific victim, then those funds, as you correctly say, go to the consolidated fund, and it is used now to fund the general government budget, which include ensuring police officers are paid, ensuring that there are good police stations, ensure that salary for teachers, nurses. So it contributes to the government budget in trying to meet the necessary needs of the country.
Yeah, I just want to say something, Keith. In your example a while ago, say if somebody bought contraband from me, I don't peddle narcotics.
Okay, that's good to know. That is on record.
Right. Now, so it goes to the consolidated fund in those instances.
Yes.
In other instances where a victim is clearly identified, so Miss So-and-so, Mr. So-and-so, they lost X amount of money, whatever it is, to that criminal over there, then in those instances, the victim can get their money back, yes?
That is correct. So whether it is a country, whether it is an institution, whether it is an individual, once they are identified, the system, the legislation that governs our operation allow those recovered proceeds to be sent back to the victims. And I'll quickly cite a good example.
Yeah.
In recent times, someone who is incarcerated established a company purportedly selling used cars. A number of persons, Jamaicans like their cars, a number of persons gave him money to purchase cars, but it was just a fraudulent scheme. Operation done, assets recovered, which include cash, and at the end of the day, approximately 7 persons were in a position where the FID was able to return funds to them to the extent of the amounts that they paid to this individual.
Wow, well done. Good on you and good on the FID for getting that done. There might be viewers and people like myself now wondering about the process. So just kind of walk us through what I'd want to call the legal pathways to recovery. So criminal confiscation after conviction, civil forfeitures, cash seizures. We hear this funny phrase, pecuniary penalty, pecuniary penalty orders, restraint orders, etc. How are those used, and what's kind of the difference across them?
So you're really getting technical there. So as simple as possible. So we have three primary tools that we use to recover the proceeds of crime in Jamaica. First one being cash seizure.
Yeah.
The rules are straight. If you have cash of 100,000 or more, there's suspicion that it is the proceeds of crime are intended for use in the proceeds of crime, then the police officers or authorized officers, which include a custom officer or an officer of the agency, can seize that cash and undertake investigation, and if satisfied by the court that it is the proceeds of crime are intended for use in criminal conduct, then it will be forfeited to the state.
Pause right there. So you're saying, for example, the police have set up a stop and search.
Yes.
Right? And in that stop and search, I have $100,000 or more in cash on me.
Yes.
And they inquire the purpose of the funds. If my answer is a little shaky, then they are authorized to seize the cash.
Yes.
And then pursue the necessary investigations. And if it is deemed by the court that that money is a proceed of a criminal activity or was intended for a criminal activity, then I don't see that money again.
That is it.
Otherwise, it is returned to me.
Right.
Do I get interest if it's returned to me?
Yes, we do. Okay. So the law again mandate that it should be placed in an interest-bearing account.
Escrow.
And if you are successful against the state, it is returned to you in addition to the interest that is earned on it.
All right. Well, let's get into the other ones, the civil forfeitures and so on.
Right. So as it relates to civil forfeiture, this is very novel. Is a tool that came out in 2007 globally, and essentially you are able to recover property from someone even if there's no conviction involved. So the property itself is what is examined in detail to determine whether it is the proceeds of crime. And a good example, you and another individual, good friends, unknown to you, is a drug trafficker. But his wealth is so much, and having that long-standing relationship with you, he purchased a nice apartment somewhere in Kingston for $250,000 US, and that is given to you and placed in your name. But based on investigation, based on the origin of the funds, he being a documented drug dealer, and we are able to follow the money into the purchase of that property which is registered in your name, because you were unaware of his criminal involvement. So you don't have that mens rea aspect. We cannot charge you criminally for money laundering. But what we can do using the civil provisions is to seek to recover that property from you.
You used the phrase a while ago, mens rea.
Yeah. So it is the mental element. You know or should have reasonable knowledge to believe.
Right.
So if you don't have any of those thresholds in regards to your long-standing friend being involved in drugs, then we cannot reasonably charge you and get a successful conviction.
So it's almost like plausible deniability.
Exactly so.
Yeah.
So you would know that, well, over the years, he has been running taxes in New York, which was only a front for that excessive money. Then you have a good case in terms of avoiding criminal sanctions.
Yeah. You want to touch on restraint orders so people can get an idea of what happens in that case?
Yeah. As it relates to restraint, it is a pre-recovery tool. So you want to ensure that the asset is in place when you get the forfeiture so you can take possession of it. Most criminals, when they know that they're under investigation, will try to dispose, or even in some draconian cases, destroy the assets so the state cannot get it.
Right.
When you place a restraint order against the asset, then it prevents that individual from dealing or transferring or selling that asset. So it is preserved until the final court's decision.
Could an example be if I am a criminal purchased a motor vehicle, then in the process of the court case or during the investigation, and a restraint order is placed on that motor vehicle or fleet of motor vehicles, so that I can't sell them, I can't move them on.
Yes.
Because unless, of course, I trick somebody, because sometimes people move vehicles without even getting a title and just figure, say, oh, spend the money.
Right, so that would be taking a calculated risk on the part of the purchaser.
Yes.
Because clearly you don't want a clean title, you don't want to go to the tax office.
Right.
But you take that title to the tax office, they'll advise that the vehicle is currently restrained.
Yeah.
Right, so it is a very effective tool. Criminals are very smart, and they'll try to dispose of these assets to prevent the state from ultimately forfeiting them.
Yeah.
You also mentioned forfeiture investigation. We refer to it as post-conviction forfeiture.
Okay.
So this only kick in when someone is convicted of an offense, a criminal offense, that we believe he obtained a benefit from. When that is done, the law allows us to apply 4 assumptions in regards to his income, expenditure, and assets held. And those assumptions say all categories there were obtained based on his criminal lifestyle. And it shifts the onus, it shifts the responsibility on that defendant to attend court and satisfactorily prove to the judge that our assumption is incorrect.
So could an example be, let's say I have a basic job,
Yes.
right? That doesn't pay large sums of money, right? This is 2025. So let's say I have a job that pays me $150,000 a month. That's normal money, right? But over time, I've acquired motor vehicles that cost $15 million, right? Now, on a salary of $150,000 a month, it's very difficult to convince a bank to give me a loan for a $15 million motor vehicle. And then over the course of, say, another year or 2, I've built this massive mansion, really, on my property. Later on, through courts, you realize that I was guilty of some illegal activity. That post-conviction forfeiture now would kick in, because based on what I was earning, I could not legally afford to build that mansion and acquire this.
So you got
vehicle.
it perfectly right. So we'll now make that assumption that that motor vehicle for 15 million, you finance it from the proceeds of crime. And the construction of the property was also financed from the proceeds of crime. And you will have to have that responsibility to say that is not so, by providing cogent evidence to the court.
Yeah.
Not just word of mouth that my friend loaned me 5 million or money remitted from overseas, from sources. It has to be more evidential to rebut those assumptions.
In one of your previous answers, you used the phrase follow the money, which is the name of the podcast, right? And if you're doing financial crime investigations, you have to literally follow the money. So let's talk through things such as like your data analytics, using bank records, beneficial ownership. How are those types of tools used to...
No. So one of the key person at the FID are our forensic accountants, and they are highly trained and highly experienced. And when we try to follow money, we have a financial intelligence unit that has access to multiple databases, both in Jamaica and the network to reach overseas to determine what assets exist.
So Keith, you can tell, not you personally, but those forensic examiners and forensic accountants can tell how I spend my money. Well, I mean, obviously once the court orders that, you can do research to find out how the money spent, how it really goes.
I mean, if we are able to get court order and obtain your bank account, our forensic team is able to analyze that bank accounts from as far back, despite how many bank accounts you have, and reenact transaction and make sense of transactions.
Wow.
So it will provide leads to assets, to your vacation. I know someone like you love shopping on Amazon, so it would give us an idea. It may seem trivial, but your example, you're earning 150,000 per month.
Right.
But the extent of your Amazon shopping is 500,000 per month.
Yeah.
So that is a good indication that you have funds from unknown sources.
Right.
We observe also that persons are using legal arrangements and legal persons like companies to hold assets, or even to use nominees, which might be family members or close friends.
Also, you put the asset in somebody else's name, so rather than buy it in the house in your name, you buy it in a mommy name
There
or
you
daddy
go.
name. Or,
there you go. But most times those parents don't have any known legal income either. So it basically raised that suspicion, which now cause your innocent parents to be subjected to a financial investigation. Right? So the techniques are there, and we use multiple data, as I said before, and we have provisions in the law that allow us to access your banking records, and we can go back as far as we want to and do the analysis to see the income source and how those funds are utilized.
I have a tricky one for you. How do you prioritize like targets? Let's say, for example, it's like a criminal network.
Yes.
You know, multiple people working together. There might be levels to it. There might be a hierarchy, maybe not, but you have, say, 5 people, 6 people in a gang, crew, organization, whatever it is, and you're pursuing an investigation. Do you rank them? Can you look at everybody all at the same time?
Yeah, it is usually tricky. The easiest person that is able to be investigated and charged are the runners, right? The straw men. They are the ones transporting the drugs. They are the ones making the call to victims of lottery scamming overseas. They are the ones that are using
do the heavy lifting.
Yes, using their account in the form of money mule to get accounts from victims' accounts that were fleeced from their funds in bank accounts. But when you have those persons in custody, your disruption system must now move to the head of that stream. Because if you don't sever the head of the snake, then you know the crime will continue, because they will just recruit other youngsters to carry out those foot soldiers' work. So while strategy tend to focus in the short term on the runners, the front straw men, ultimately we want to sever the head of that snake, which is the head of the stream. So we prioritize in that area. Mastermind tend to distance themselves from crime, but long term, as demonstrated with several of our drug kingpins and community dons, it takes time, but ultimately law enforcement will get you.
On that matter of organization, let's come on the other side of the fence, because I just spoke about investigating like a group, an organized crime group or organized criminal syndicate. It must take a lot of collaboration within the FID across other law enforcement agencies who are also your partners. So what's the connection and role that's played by, say, the forensic examiner, an investigator, the prosecutors, the intelligence analysts, the data analysts, and so on?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Garth. And FID model and most modern law enforcement model use a multidisciplinary team in undertaking complex transnational organized crime. For FID, we have in-house, as you mentioned, the forensic accountants, the intelligence analysts, police officers, JSAFE officers are stationed at the Financial Investigations Division, and we have a team of experienced prosecutors. When cases are assigned, we meet as a group, and we develop investigative plans and tasking, and those are undertaken. The lawyers on board will review the evidence that we have, know what points are to be proven in court, and guide us in carrying out the necessary inquiries to ensure that we have a complete file that has a high probability of success. Where matters are more significant, clearly we engage the Office of the DPP very early in our investigation to ensure that based on their remit and their vast experience, they can provide that guidance. So it is a multidisciplinary team that is engaged at the moment an investigation is assigned, and with that multiple skill sets, we are able to do an effective investigation that usually ends in the state's favor.
There are two things I want to follow on, because you just mentioned engaging with the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions early.
Yes.
But before, because I know that time is of the essence where investigations are concerned. So before I get there, you mentioned police officers being stationed at the FID. In my reading and preparing for this interview, I came across the Constabulary Financial Unit, the CFU, and these are who? Officers from, I think, like CTOC, who are trained in financial investigations that are embedded at the FID?
Yes.
How does that work?
You are correct. So we have a memorandum of understanding with the Jamaica Constabulary Force between the JCF and the Financial Investigations Division. One of those requirements under the MOU is for police officers to be physically stationed at the FID, because we undertake criminal investigations.
Right.
Money laundering is a criminal investigation. Financial crime, in terms of fraud, lottery scamming, or financial criminal investigation. So they are there with us, and we are able to manage information, manage cases, and get better outcome having that set of dedicated, highly trained police officers whose number is 33 on structure at the FID that does case solely for the Financial Investigations Division.
Gotcha.
So this mechanism and this relationship has been working effectively over the years.
Time is of the essence when it comes to investigating these cases, because criminals, as you pointed out earlier, would sometimes want to quickly dispose of assets and so on. Give me an example of how, like, an early connection with, like, the DPP and just moving at pace to get an early restraint, for example, just dented the operations of, say, a criminal gang.
Yeah. Well, good question again. And we dealt with a case just recently. I think we obtained the forfeiture order in the latter part of 2023. But this individual resided in the States. He was known to be a financier of a major gang operating out of St. Catherine. He was involved in narcotics. Clearly, that was a source of his funds to purchase weapons and support the community. And we collaborated with the U.S. law enforcement agencies that advised us of his arrest and the suspicion that he repatriated ill-gotten gains to Jamaica.
Yes.
So we carried out our investigation and discovered that there were multiple real estate registered in his mother's name.
Oh.
In his mother's name. So we carried out our investigation, quickly restrained those assets, because he being charged, they would be aware that he's before the court involved in narcotics and probably would take steps to dispose of those assets. So we quickly utilized the restraint provision, secured those assets, charged the mother, elderly lady, with money laundering, and after some time before the court, she entered a guilty plea, and we were successful in forfeiting 6 properties spread out in Jamaica. Purchase price of approximately $200 million. So it was international cooperation at its best. It was a timely use of restraint order. It was treating with a high-risk money laundering threat of narcotics trafficking and transnational organized crime that ultimately resulted in assets being recovered to the state.
Now, that's really good, and congratulations to the entire team at the FID and your partner agencies locally and internationally on getting that case cracked. An obvious question here: how does asset recovery and, for example, the work of the FID in general strengthen Jamaica's financial system? What does that do?
Right, so that's a very strategic question, and Jamaica does not operate in a vacuum. It is part of a global network, a global group of countries. And there are standards that dictates what legislation must be in place and other measures to counter the threats of money laundering, terrorism financing, and other financial crimes. One of these standards requires us to undertake a mutual evaluation that we are currently going through.
That's in 2025?
In 2025,
into 26?
actual into 2026.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Now, if those assessors determine that Jamaica is not safeguarding its financial sector and it is being abused for money laundering purposes, we will be placed on a grey list, a follow-up list to say other countries be wary of what is happening in Jamaica. It will impact remittances coming in. It will impact overseas investors thinking twice about investing in Jamaica where ML and other crime is high, and it will have devastating impact on our national economy. So we have to safeguard our financial sector. And in doing so, we must ensure that criminals do not use it to launder the proceeds of crime.
Yeah. Are there any trends that you're noticing as we're wrapping up just now? Are you noticing any particular types of trends in criminal activities, in how they're trying to hide the money, and so on? What are you seeing?
Yeah. In terms of threats, the crimes that are giving rise to high proceeds, we are looking at narcotics trafficking, we are looking at fraud, we are looking at cybercrime, and we are looking to a lesser extent of the trading in counterfeit goods. What we observe, most crime, subsistence level lifestyle. So the proceeds is basically consumed on a daily basis. Some flashy lifestyle entertainment, some based on the amounts will have bank accounts where they save. But outside of those immediate uses, you'll find those seeking to purchase motor vehicles. Nowadays they refer to those motor vehicles as the beast. So you'll see BMW sedans, Mercedes, Mark X, Toyota Crown.
Yes.
The more sophisticated ones will go into real estate or even open businesses where they involve in the importation of goods from overseas and try to sell of those dispose of through their businesses and legitimize. More sophisticated criminals and money launderers will open used car businesses or even rent-a-car businesses. And we have seen quite a number of those indicators in recent times.
Yeah. And in fighting and combating these financial crimes, everybody has a role to play. The banks have a role to play. The financial institutions overall have a role to play. The regulators have a role to play. Things like suspicious transaction reports, are they? And threshold transaction reports and things of those natures. That nature being reported to the FID.
Yes.
When you take a look at how prepared are we to tackle, let's say, when criminals start moving through things like cryptocurrency? Is Jamaica looking in that direction to prepare itself to really dismantle networks when they get more sophisticated?
Yes, as I mentioned before, we're part of a global landscape. Right. And the organization with remit for the control of money laundering is the Financial Action Task Force. And one of their standards is that you must have in place a legislation treating with the registration of virtual asset service provider. That legislation is drafted. I believe it is currently at the Ministry of Finance being reviewed and will be tabled in time for assessment. Outside of that, between the FID and the MOCA, the Major Organized Crime and Anti-Corruption Agency, and the Jamaica Constabulary Force, we have been speaking. We have been looking at potential risk in this area and to ensure that there's an effective system in place to investigate these type of crimes, so including tracing crypto on the blockchain.
Yeah.
So that technique and know-how currently reside in one of our agencies whose name I will not call.
Of course.
We also have a framework in place with a known, well-established asset recovery team based in the United States that has the platform to seize these assets as they are identified, manage them, and dispose of them so we can get the best benefit in terms of recovery efforts of crypto-related assets.
Yeah. As we close, Keith, I'm going to allow you to speak. I mean, you've said quite a lot, but is there any advice that you'd want to give the average Jamaican citizen? Is there any word of encouragement that you would wish to give to your colleagues in law enforcement and just the country in general, where asset recovery and combating financial crime are concerned? And you can always feel free to stare into that camera and just express yourself.
So most crimes now are committed, not just in Jamaica, but globally, because there's a profit motive to it, whether it is fraud, extortion, incidents of the trading in counterfeit goods. There's a profit motive. But Jamaica has a well-developed infrastructure, both in terms of legislation, in terms of a highly trained and motivated team of investigators, and a lot of efficiency in our court system. So you may believe that you are now benefiting from your crime, but ultimately, the system will catch you and you'll be asked to repay the entire benefit that you have obtained from your criminal lifestyle. So rather than using those energies and skill set that you have in trying to scam persons in the States from their hard-earned saving, I am strongly recommending that you think twice and use those skills legally so that you may have an income that is legitimately earned and you move incrementally until you are able to get the level of comfort financially that you seek to obtain. So that is my advice. I thank our law enforcement partners for the tremendous work that they are doing, both local partners and overseas. But we have a mandate, and the mandate is to make crime in Jamaica as low as possible, where people feel comfortable to live, to invest, and to work and raise their family. Thank you.
Well said, Keith. Very well said. It's been eye-opening. I mean, as usual, we've learned quite a bit, about asset recovery, how it works, who the teams are behind it, and how criminals are trying to beat the system. So very, very eye-opening, and just to broaden our understanding. And I sincerely hope that you, the viewers, have also, and listeners, have also benefited from that bit. So again, thank you very much for joining us, Keith Darien, the Principal Director of Financial Crimes Investigations at the FID. I got your title right, yes?
Yeah, correct, sir.
Very good. And as always, if you suspect any type of financial crime, or if you need more information on asset recovery, call the FID hotline at 876-928-5141-8. That's 876-928-5141-8. Or you may email them at contact@fid.gov.jm. That's contact@fid.gov.jm. You can always follow the FID as well on Instagram and X, formerly known as Twitter, at FID Jamaica. That's at FID Jamaica. I'm Garth Williams. Join us next time for more on Follow the Money.
Excellent.